Simon, you remember the time, what was his name? Graeme Souness used to sit in that very seat that Danny Murphy's sitting in. Well, he might be coming
before
back.
He legged it.
Well, I think he'll be coming back. Maybe he might do the odd show with us. We shall see. We shall see.
Very odd.
But we all remember, Simon, there was a raised eyebrow or two in here and out there when Souness gave us his view of what Manchester United had got in Casemiro.
He's 30 years old and it's 70 million. If it's 60 with add-ons going to 70, it's too much money. It's Man United all over again. Man United will pay a premium for players because it's Man United and it's the Premier League and people know it's a wash with money. But I don't see him making them any better when they have the ball. He was playing with great players. He's not a great player. He's never been a great player. I see him as being a steady Eddie who will help United be more solid in the midfield. I don't think he's got any great range of passing. I don't think he's going to make other people play. I think he was lucky to be in that Real Madrid team. I never looked forward to watching Casemiro play. It wasn't, Benzema, yeah, definitely. The other midfield players, yeah, definitely. I never thought, I'm really excited to watch Casemiro play today.
That was Graeme's view. And Danny, now Jamie Carragher has come out and has said the Brazilian will end up costing United more than Arsenal and Chelsea paid for Rice and Caicedo. I never believed Casemiro would be value for money. He says because he's at a stage of his career when he cannot fully repay United's massive fee. Steady Eddie. He was right.
Well, if I deal with Carragher first, I think that makes sense. I think that makes sense because in another couple of years they're going to have to be looking for someone again like in that role. So I understand where he's coming from a business, but needs must at the time. They needed someone in and they got him.
Do you think it was a panic buy? Jamie says it was a panic buy when he joined a year ago.
I think he was the best of any of the options they had at the time, thinking back to what was available, although they should have been maybe.
Because they wanted a boy from Barcelona, didn't they? And they kept on courting him, and they couldn't get him, could they?
You're right, Frankie de Jong.
You're right. He's a bit more of a forward-thinking midfielder. He's not really a holding player. But I think Carragher's probably right. They are going to have to spend again, but they've got it, and they'll have it again in a couple of years. So I don't think that's a big deal. I don't think he's a steady Eddie.
What do you think he is?
I think he's hell of a lot better than that.
I mean, Carragher thinks he's an aging stellar name signed for big money and on a massive salary to appease increasingly disgruntled fans.
Well, look, it's all about the dynamic of a team and the way someone fits in and the way people perceive you to be. He's a holding midfielder. If he was playing in a midfield that had better defensive tactical setup, he wouldn't look as isolated as he has done in the first two games. He's a wonderful player. You don't win the Champions League he's won playing Madrid for the years he has if you're a steady Eddie. You don't stay in that team. He's better than a steady Eddie and he's very good on the ball and he sees a pass and he can score a goal. But the reason Souness calls him a steady Eddie because Souness was one of the greatest midfielders of his time who had every attribute a midfielder could want. Is
Casemiro one of the greatest midfielders of his time?
He's been one of the best holding midfield players of the last decade.
Been. Is there much more to come from Casemiro in a United shirt?
I think he'll get back to last season's form. I wouldn't worry about that. But I think he needs some legs around him to help him. And I think we'll see, especially as there's been an injury now to Mount for the next couple of games, I think you'll see McTominay probably come in and play alongside him to give him some legs and give him some help. And I think he's a notorious slow starter anyway. Listening to a Spanish expert the other day who's been watching the Spanish League for God knows how long said he tended to start slow at Madrid. He looks leggy when he's not at it. But I don't worry about him for the next year or two. Casemiro, he's a super player.
Has Ten Hag got the balance wrong though, Danny, at Manchester United? Yeah, well, in that area.
So this is the thing. I got a bit of stick beginning of last year when I wasn't wowed by the Eriksen signing because I said I don't think with him and Fernandes in the side, they're going to be able to compete against the bigger teams, especially away from home, which proved right. I mean, their away record was horrendous, especially against the big top 8. Don't think they won one. And that's because in today's modern football, in the Premier League especially, in the central midfield areas, if you don't have tenacity, legs and athleticism, you are struggling against the best teams. Now, Mount is better than Eriksen defensively, but Mount is still a creative player. He's not a defensive-minded footballer. So you are still struggling with that balance, and you could see it. And the other problem United have got is their two wide men are not particularly good defensively. So all of a sudden, you have got 5 offensive players in the team who their nature isn't defensive.
It isn't part of the coaching regime to make them as such. I mean, we've seen a marked improvement in Jack Grealish. we've seen Jack Grealish doing far different things than we ever anticipated he would do.
Yes. So this is where Ten Hag the question mark arises. If you're going to keep playing... So Fernandes is a great example.
Is he a captain, by the way? Because I made an observation the other day. And
He's not for me.
No, me either.
Not for me. And I said that last season, we agreed. I don't think he's captain. But wonderful creative player, by the way. Amazing technique, game changer, scores goals, makes goals. Brilliant, no problem. Those numbers speak for themselves. But he is a passenger defensively more often than not. Now, if you were a video analyst at Manchester United, and I could do this about the wide players in the first 2 games as well, too many times you walk past Fernandes' token gesture in midfield. And that's fine if you're prepared to accept his lack of defensive ability because you've got 2 others who can cover him. A bit like Tottenham the other day, and they've got, at the moment, Sarr and Basuma. Maddison plays in there. Maddison, I wouldn't say is a great defensive... He's not reliable in his defensive work. And Fernandes is the same because he's a creative player.
Right.
Now, you either ask more of every individual in the pitch, or you play a system that covers their inefficiencies, or deficiencies is the word. So if you're going to accept Fernandes playing as a 10, and by the way, the game they beat Man City last year, they stuck him out wide because they couldn't cope in the middle and they got done 6 at City.
Yeah.
If you're going to accept his lack of discipline defensively, and that's what I was saying about the video analysis to United, they should be showing him that with Ten Hag. They should be saying to him, look, that can't continue. You can't keep just token gesturing your defensive work and people flying by you like you're not there.
You see, Danny, I think
if they're going to play him, Jim, they've got to have 2 behind him. So if you want to keep playing Fernandes as a 10 or as an 8, whatever you want to call it, attacking midfielder, you need 2 behind him.
And who would the 2 be?
Well, looking at what United got at the moment, you'd have McTominay.
Yeah.
Right.
And you'd probably, what I would do at the moment, make it a bit easier on Mount, is playing wide.
You see, listening to you there, Danny, and listening closely to you, and then reading what Carragher says, the setup of their midfield isn't right. I think there are a few things wrong. The manager's setup, what he's asking them to do in terms of profile of players, is not right. Now, what you and Jamie are pointing out, but what's Ten Hag not seeing?
Well, I was talking Monday night, and I can't for the life of me, I just don't understand how you can allow the same mistakes to happen continually. So what I mean by mistakes is if Bruno's your captain, he's playing in that role, you might as well tell him not to defend the way he defends sometimes. So if you're going to put up with that, I don't understand how you can't change it and have a sit down and do some work in the analysis room and go, look, I could show you 10 examples of the 2 games where you just go, my God. You don't have to be a physically commanding specimen to defend properly. You stay on your feet, you work your feet, you show someone the right way, you're there in position.
Right.
You don't have to dive in and gesture it, let people run by you like you don't exist. You can't do that. And the wide men haven't been good either. Let's get that right. So I'm not just going on Fernandes. The wide men sometimes letting their runners go, fullbacks go. I mean, Wolves were flying at United from all over. People weren't matching runs. People weren't doing their defensive work in a way that I would coach the under-14s to do that.
So Ten Hag's got a lot to do, right?
Yeah, he's got to recognise what the problem is. And the problem, I mean, the Tottenham game, the holes, the distances between the midfield 3, the lack of basic endeavour to track runners, to stay on your feet, just to do things that any good team would do. And that's why I said it earlier. If you watch Palace, they gave Arsenal the respect they deserved. The 2 midfielders, they never once let Havertz or Odegaard disappear.
That's because Palace accept what they are, though, don't they?
No, but you've still got to do the running, the work.
Sure,
and the work is...
But it's an easier acceptance of what you are when you know your levels. Whereas United are Manchester United. They're a side that spends lots of money. They've got on paper prima facie players that are going to take games to the opposition. But they've still got to do the other stuff. Whereas Palace don't have that expectation upon them, know what they are. They're prepared to accept what they are. Their players are prepared to accept it. You've got Garnacho, you've got Rashford, you've got other players in the United team. And I think Roy Keane was brilliant in his analysis the other day, called them fizzy drinks that will break your heart because they'll let you down away from home, because that is the character of the side that he's got. And I think it's embodied, and they didn't like it, a lot of United fans, in their leadership model of Fernandes on the pitch. That team will not win a league if they don't change the culture of that football club to have people in it that understand the ramifications of playing for Man United.
But who sets the culture? It's the manager.
Ten Hag. But it's almost perplexing, isn't it? Because we talk about Chelsea last year not being able to sign a centre forward, and everyone in the world can see that they've got a problem. And the one thing they've not bought is a centre forward. This year, it's self-evident. It's not. It doesn't take Danny Murphy or Jamie Carragher to say that people are going through Manchester United like a knife through butter. It's easy right now. They're easy to play against.
I think 2 games. We are making huge.
But you start your stall, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I think teams will be looking at it, and they are off it a bit physically. They look like they're a bit behind. I don't know why. They shouldn't be with the pre-season they've had. But both teams look physically better than United, Wolves and Tottenham.
And Spurs,
second half, they look better physically, which is a worry. But I think there's an inevitability about a change in the way he's going to set up Ten Hag. He's not daft. You cannot sit down with your video analysis team and your coaches and watch that and think it's acceptable.
He doesn't fancy McTominay, does he?
Well, he's going to have to buy someone then. Let's talk about Amrabat, the Moroccan lad.
So why the same mistakes keep happening? I mean, is Ten Hag trying to send some sort of memo to the ownership?
In what way?
I need another signing. I need another defensive
midfielder. So I think he felt that Mason Mount in that role with Fernandes would be enough to give them control of a game against the likes of Wolves at Old Trafford, where they can dominate and have enough possession to not worry about the defensive aspect. I don't think he thought Wolves were going to turn up and play with the confidence and the technical ability and the desire that they did. I think away from home, when you go to Tottenham, when you go to City, when you go Liverpool, and you go all them get Newcastle, you are going to have to find a different way, because you'll get run all over. I mean, Newcastle's physicality and the way they dealt go after teams last year to get themselves in the wonderful position that they did was incredible. They didn't have they don't carry passengers, Newcastle. Yeah. No. You don't. And Man City, and this is where Pep is. This is what we're talking about management. Man City have wonderfully gifted footballers who work harder than everybody else. I always go back to David Silva.
That comes to the coach, doesn't it?
David Silva's levels and his numbers when Pep first came in went through the roof in distance covered, high intensity, winning the ball back. This is David Silva, one of the best players we've ever seen in our league. Bernardo Silva, technically gifted, genius, creative footballer. Central midfield in a team that won the league, playing alongside Rodri last season for the majority, and people like Gundogan. Yeah. De Bruyne working off the ball. Grealish is a great example of someone who's gone levels. You don't have to be a defensive-minded player to be a good defensive player. So
sure.
Grealish now never has right-backs running off the back of him. You don't watch Grealish play, do you, and go, always let him go again?
No, not now.
Because
no, you're right.
Pep won't have it.
Yeah.
And there's a reason he's let Mahrez go with all his brilliance. There's a reason Bernardo Silva played right wing against Real Madrid and Bayern Munich. Because Mahrez didn't do you know what? Bernardo, you're playing out there. He won't accept it. And until Ten Hag says, actually, I'm not accepting that, you won't play, they'll keep
You know a lot about this. You should think about a career in football.
Well, do you know what? I played midfield, and I'm very aware of how you need this. Doesn't matter how good you are, you've got to have players who are disciplined as well.
Okay, but Casemiro is more than a steady Eddie.
Yeah.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.